All right, we're gonna do one more reader before we do a tight intermission. We have a lot of great acts still coming up, so don't go away. But first, to quite possibly disturb you into buying more drinks, Martin Mundt writes uncompromising nonsense. His words. He is unflinching in his examination of the surface of character. He is undoubtedly an undisputed underachiever. He has an unsettling fondness for words that begin with un. This week his favorite word is onion. That's the bio he gave me. I have had the privilege of publishing his first short story collection in a chapbook form and then an expanded edition called The Crawling Avatar. It was by far Twilight Tale's greatest seller. The next 2, 3, and 4 combined barely equal the sales of what we did with that book. You can also find his funny, twisted horror in the dark underbelly of Hymns, Candy in the Dumpster, Synchronized Sleepwalking, and a full-length novel, Reanimated Americans. He was one of the first friends I made when I moved to Chicago 36 years ago, and I've had the pleasure of workshopping with him for most of those years. Please welcome Martin Mundt.
Thank you, Tina. And Barry, wherever Barry is. I think this room is a little bit young for this story. I reached way back for this one. Tina wasn't instrumental in publishing my first story. That was before I knew her, but she was instrumental in publishing the first story I published in the 90s. And she was instrumental in publishing the first chapbook I published also in the 90s. That's how far back we go. So I wrote a new story, which is the first story I've written in years. So we're going to find out if this is any good. I also can no longer see. Oh, there we go. This story is called What Would Jaja Do? Scott was of two minds. He stood in the middle of the Greyhound station and he couldn't decide whether to get right on the next bus back home or walk out the doors into San Francisco. He listened to the muzak play a sad, dispirited tune over the station's speakers, and it seemed to call him home to everything the first 15 years of his life had taught him, urging him to go and buy a ticket right back to where he'd come from. But he was of two minds. There was the mind that told him he was a 15-year-old boy running away from home, and there was the other mind inside that mind that told him, against all the visible evidence, that he was really a 15-year-old girl trying to run away from the 15-year-old boy. The station's glass front doors glowed in the bright noontime sunlight. He hiked up his backpack and walked out the doors right past the ticket counters. 1970 was going to be his year. The inside of the bar swirled like no room Scott could remember, or maybe his brain swirled, he couldn't quite tell. The stage was lit like a kaleidoscopic sunset. A haze of cigarette smoke hovered along the ceiling, thicker than in the VFW bar back home, the one he'd had to drag his dad, and sometimes his mom, out of more than once. The place was called the Feather Boa, a drag club. He'd read about it in the free newspaper back home. The paper he wasn't supposed to read, the one where the ink rubbed off on his fingers. His waitress came with his drink, a Coca-Cola. First time at the Boa, she said. She had a deep, almost trained voice. She set a coaster on the round table and a Coke on top of that. Yeah, he said. He stared at her hand, deep red nails and big plastic rings on her fingers. I thought so. Welcome, she smiled, and then she curtsied. She was tall, taller than Scott, probably even without her 5-inch heels. Her costume amounted to nothing but red feather boas wound around her body. The feathers floated and flounced with her movements. Thanks, he said. He fumbled for his wallet, hypnotized by her costume. She waved him off. First one's on me, sweetie. Just remember to leave a nice tip. I tell you to enjoy the show, but I think you will anyways. She turned and left, boas whirling, and he could have sworn he saw parts of her he wasn't supposed to see, but he couldn't be sure. When she was gone, a red feather remained on the table. He remembered why he'd come here. He could hardly wait to see his first boy dressed as a girl. And then the room went as dark as closed eyes, and after a moment, one narrow white spotlight, like a door left ajar into a bright room, snapped on stage. The spot illuminated an upturned face. Not a beautiful face, but pretty. Older, a little pudgy, a little worn, a little like the lady that Scott knew who worked at the supermarket back home. Except his face had big, round blue eyes, with lashes as heavy with mascara as 2 nests of black spiders. I'm Mitzi Misdeed, she said, in a voice that had once been a gravel road, but that jeeps and tanks had worn down over the years. And I'm your mistress of ceremonies. The whole stage lit up. Mitzi was coiffed in a Grand Ole Opry, platinum blonde Palace of Versailles hairdo, and she wore a red and gold satin kimono that slipped and slid over her 250 pounds as if it were chasing the jiggle of her unrestrained figure around like the Keystone Cops. The show began. Scott's brain stopped. The lights flashed and strobed and spun, the music thumped. The ladies of the feather boa sang, one after another, in pairs and in groups, their songs sliding past like a radio dial set to a station he wasn't allowed to listen to back home. His mind did things to him, exciting things, unheard of things, religiously forbidden things. The ladies danced and circled through the crowd from table to table. The vibrato in their voices made the cigarette smoke shiver and shake along the ceiling. The dancing pulsed through the floor. Scott almost started tapping his foot. His mind did tempting things. His mind did mind-expanding things, not done in a million years back home things. The ladies of the boa wore feathers and glitter and jewels and sequins and spandex and beads and rhinestones and 35 ladies worth of makeup on only 7 ladies. And one even wore strings of little lights like the kind on Christmas trees, blinking on and off, and he didn't know how she did that, but he didn't know how any of them danced in platform heels as tall as his family Bible was thick, or even how they got up on stage in front of a crowd of people dressed like a lot of the women in Star Trek. Like they were hardly dressed at all. Scott wasn't allowed to watch Star Trek back home anymore. His mind couldn't accept that all these ladies were really boys, or even that any of them were. He spent the whole show in his dark corner at his dark table, watching beautiful performers thinking, she has to be a girl, over and over again, but he both believed it and didn't. He did enjoy the lady who played Mississippi Queen on the accordion, though. She was very talented. He'd never seen an accordion player perform on a unicycle before. Afterwards, Scott couldn't quite put his finger on how exactly he ended up where he ended up. The show had finished with the cast and audience all singing "Everything is Beautiful" together, except for him. He couldn't sing. And the next thing he knew, the crowd was gone, and the ladies of the boa had surrounded him on his way out. And now he was here at some 4-story 1890s mansion in a bad part of town at 4 a.m. with all the ladies, led by Mitzi Misdeed herself. It seemed like the kind of unwholesome situation his parents would have warned him about if they could ever have imagined it happening. "You're an honorary drag queen tonight, Scotty," said Mimi, his waitress. "Oh, more than honorary," said Mitzi. "You're one of us, I think, little bunny. I could tell by your stone-cold, terrified paralysis during our entire show." "Tell me I'm wrong. I dare you." "Mitzi dares you," said Mimi. The rest of the ladies nodded their heads. "You've been dared, Scotty," said Dee Dee, the accordion player. Said Scott. The inside of his mouth felt as if he'd been stung by 100 bees. Words had always been the square wheels on the road of life for him. "That's what I thought," said Mitzi. She walked into the mansion and turned on lights. She wore well-worn army boots with a tie-dyed muumuu. The floorboards creaked where she stepped. "This is my home," she said, spreading her arms wide. The ladies still surrounded Scott, almost zipped around him like a backpack, and ushered him into the living room. "You have lovely bone structure," said Cece. She had dressed as a soldier and tap danced to the Ballad of the Green Berets sung by Barry Sadler in the show, losing equipment and the pieces of a uniform bit by bit as the song progressed until she ended up dancing in nothing but an American flag bikini. Scott was still of two minds whether it was patriotic or not. "She should do Twiggy in the show," said Kiki. "Twiggy? Scotty's not English. Why not Edie Sedgwick?" said Mimi. "What about Joey Heatherton?" said Dee Dee. Scott had no idea who Twiggy or Edie Sedgwick were. But she'd seen Joey Heatherton on Ed Sullivan. "Oh yeah, she could do Joey. We could make her blonde. We'd need to see her legs." Ladies, said Mitzi, "can we let her be her first? Before we put her into the show?" She turned to Scott. "What's your girl name, dear?" I never thought about it," said Scott. "Oh my, you are a newborn, aren't you? We've been given a grave responsibility then. Well, everybody here has two names because we all deserve better than the one old ill-fitting name we got trapped with as boys. Hence, Mimi, Kiki, Dee Dee, Cece. And I think you look exactly like Zsa. Zsa, Scott knew who she was. But the important thing is, said Mitzi, is you're one of us now. But can't we call her JoJo for Joey Heatherton, said Dee Dee. She assumed an attitude of exaggerated prayer and frosted pink